Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, I've been watching Tim Pool for a long time. Tim's gotten me through a lot of things that have been bad in my life. My parents passing, the COVID crap. Specifically, having to deal with my parents was a big deal, especially with my dad's cancer diagnosis and his, 6 or 7 months of the last part of his life. Tim knows me from nothing. Only thing I do is I subscribe to timcast. I'm a fan. I think he's a reasonable guy. And that's why I like him, is that during the time I've watched timcast, or Tim Pool, he's flipped 180 degrees on gun control. And that's a good thing. That means we're winning on the inroads. What I think is interesting in this community is 2A guys are tired. We've been fighting this battle along the political battle, but not because we wanted to, but because we were forced to for years now. It doesn't seem like any party is really in it for freedom. And other than the libertarians, but the libertarians act like clowns on the national stage and make us look like idiots. What needs to happen, okay, is that call to action Tim has, it needs to be everywhere and not just for what we're seeing with the economy. Your basic rights have been eroded for years, and we all know that. But what is Tim missing? So his, Hannah Claire, all those guys at Timcast News, they're great. They cover 2A events and 2A issues, but they don't have a section. And this is an ongoing issue. This should be like something on Timcast that would be akin to, like obits, or on a news site, like a newspaper site, or Style or something. A section that is dedicated to this. And why I say that is this is a consistent fight. We've died 1,000 times over, or we're about to die, with 1,001 paper cuts that they've inflicted on the 2A amendment, or the Second Amendment, because we keep trying to concede and be reasonable, or so we think, because we think they're going to debate with us. The sad fact of the matter is, in the 2A community, you're either with us or you're against us, and that's just how it is. There is no middle road. And when I say that, what you usually get are these FUDs, that's the best way to put it, or boomer, neocon type people, that, the 2A is good, but, and that but is always where they nail you. I've tried to unite the culture, and I'm trying to continue to make the 2A guys, all of us, whether we're hunters, competitors, or we just like the sport, to unify, because this one freedom is universal. It crosses ages, it crosses racial boundaries, it crosses country boundaries, in my opinion. It crosses every spectrum of the political experience or the American experience in the United States. And there are groups, 3 big groups that are always pulling their lion's share out there. And you'd think it'd be the NRA, since they were the 600-pound gorilla, but they're not. The NRA are sellout shills. They are the Jim McCarthys of the gun world. They will make concessions time and time again, and they've done it with Trump, and they've done it with everyone else to whittle away our rights. Well, no more. Those 3 groups I'm talking about are the Firearms Policy Coalition. These guys are active even in New Mexico. I've seen these guys right next to the NRA guys, the 1 or 2 times the NRA guys show up to gun rallies in New Mexico, unless you're in Albuquerque. Those guys are there all the time. GOA, Gun Owners of America. Why do we like Gun Owners of America? These guys are the ones that actually, in FPC, these guys actually go out and they consistently put pen to paper and raise lawsuits against these guys. Why? The courts, they're the ones that are always getting the injunctions. FPC and GOA are right now trying to get, or have gotten stays on the draconian crap that's going on in Oregon. The other one is the truth about guns. Now, this is something I could see timcast blending with, and what doesn't make a lot of sense to me is Tim has access to, like, people from Recoil Magazine. He knows people in the 2A community. He's talked about getting Brandon Herrera on. Brandon is, by and far, a big 2A advocate. I think he's great. He needs to do that to highlight what I'm talking about. Because what's come down the pipe time and time again, I've talked about it on my podcast about the 12 different pieces that GAO talks about and what has been already passed in the omnibus. And whether you're left or right, if you're about freedom, this is a problem. This is what we got to fix. Sorry about that. My dog needed to go out really bad, and he wasn't listening to me. So, so where was I? The podcast. This is why I like the live format, and this is why I don't edit my audio, is so that you can hear how human people interact and what they do. So what's cool about what else is he missing? Okay. So the truth about guns consistently puts out stuff that's going on around the world or around the U.S. And it always has implications with us at home. Okay. One of the things they passed was the push to get states to get red flag laws. Now, I've talked about what red flag laws do. They aren't good for people because they allow the government, and more specifically your enemies, whoever they are, to go directly after you and your Second Amendment rights. And then you have to pay to get all that back. That and the brace rule that's coming down the pipe will affect 40 million people who never did anything wrong, who listened to what they were supposed to, who followed the law, and they're now banning this stuff. And how do you know they're going to ban it? Because they passed, just like the IRS agents, they passed a bill to get more funding for ATF agents. It is, I would be remiss to say how pissed off this makes me. Why does this piss me off? Because they're coming after us. And what they're going to do is make examples one by one until it becomes so untenable that we give up our rights. So Tim misses some of that, and he's come around a lot where he's talking specifically about, you can own a nuclear weapon at the beginning of the 2A when it was incepted. Yes, that was the idea, and he's being facetious because he knows you can't own one, even if you wanted to, because you'd have to have millions and millions of dollars. I agree with that sentiment. And why? Because we're now seeing ATF, FBI, and local law enforcement guys with the same stuff our soldiers and Marines have when they deploy. Now, I don't know why you would need that in any quantity for American citizens. If you look at something like Scientology, their compound, they have razor wire facing on the inside of the fence to keep people from escaping. Now, they've shown pictures of that all over the place. Leah Remini did. And Scientology can come after me. I don't have anything anymore anyway, so go ahead. But the idea is the same with the 2A. What they're doing is slowly whittling every right part of this and making it seem like this is normal. Ghost guns. That's a scary term. Ghost guns have been around since the Second Amendment, since our country was alive. How do you build a musket back in the day when there weren't manufacturers to make it. You bought parts and then you assembled it yourself. What's the difference now with technology we have now? The only difference is now you're capable of producing some of these parts at home directly. And while I understand people's fear that criminals may get this type of technology, the world is a scary place already. And whether you like it or not, this genie has been out of the bottle for years now. When you talk about 3D printing, when you talk about home forging, you talk about home milling, all that stuff is not new technology. It's been around forever. They're just now becoming priced into a place where the normal average consumer can get them. The market provides. Why do I say Tim Pool misses this stuff? Because he does his channel, they all the time talk about the 2A. But they miss the nuance of what the laws are actually doing. They're going not for the big wins. If you take a magazine and you ban it, okay, what does that do? Most FUDs, or most of the normies, as you would put it, don't see that as a problem. Well, the Second Amendment guarantees you this thing, but it didn't guarantee you the right to a 30-round magazine. Well, 30 rounds is standard capacity. Tim says that even. But what makes you think that they're going to stop at 30-round magazines? What makes you think they're going to stop at 5-round magazines? What makes you stop to think that they won't ban ammunition or make it so cost prohibitive that you can't own a firearm? If you look at the Second Amendment right now and you look at what they're doing, they're raising the cost so much that your average person who doesn't have a lot of money can't afford to shoot or train with the weapon they're trying to defend themselves with, let alone purchase one. You're talking about $6 a head or $7 a head of lettuce this morning, Tim. Have you looked at ammunition prices lately? Have you tried to find primers? The status have all tried to bulk up, and then they sign on and say, go ahead and pass these laws. Look at the idiots in Oregon who said, I signed on with this. I'm a 2A supporter, but if we ban magazine capacity to only 10 rounds, a criminal will never be able to outgun me. Are you freaking serious? When do you think criminals follow laws? And if you haven't noticed lately, the FBI has become a criminal organization. So this is why I'm saying Tim misses this piece. He talks about the nuance of where everybody's pissed off in Civil War. This is where your Civil War could be real, Tim. And why I say that is because there's enough 2A people that have been pushed enough. We've been pushed for years. The woke cultural war stuff, that's newer than what we've had happen to us in the 2A community. Once it became a thing that mental idiots went out and started shooting up schools and shooting up places where people were, and guns weren't in those areas or allowed in those areas, it became a mainstream media talking point where if it bleeds, it leads, and it demonizes every one of us into criminals, when we're not. Most of us are businessmen. You know, I worked for a K-12 for 12 years. I tried my best to follow the laws. So much so that when it came to putting it on the line, I did. At the end, that's how I left. Now, it wasn't over anything like this. This was a technical issue. But nonetheless, there has to be a line in the sand. And for a lot of 2A guys, we've crossed that a long time ago. Now, I don't expect people to be violent. I don't want violence. But I do expect a lot of people that just wanted to be left alone and then them to show up to find a very nasty surprise. And that's because they've continually pushed, demonized people just trying to exercise their right, just trying to enjoy their life. And now some idiot decided they're a criminal because they exercise their freedoms. Like, share, subscribe, be great.